Hey guys, welcome to another Sunday video.
Last time we brought you guys along with on our errand day in Quartzsite, which consisted of the grocery shopping, the laundry, the dump station, water, propane fill, and garbage. But we didn't really talk about why you would even want to go to Quartzsite in the first place and what it's really all about. So that's what we're going to show you today. All right, so first off, let's talk about the two types of boondocking in Quartzsite, and that's fee and non-fee. We're most familiar with non-fee, and that's pretty much dispersed camping. That's what we're used to doing. There are tons of areas of BLM land around Quartzsite, and basically BLM land is the Bureau of Land Management, which is government-run land that we are allowed to do things like camping, day use, hiking, ATV, gun ranges, and things like that.
And that's federally owned, right?
It is government owned land, and there is some rules that go along with that, and you want to check the website for each area because it can differ just a little bit, and we'll put a lot of links down below in the description if you want to check out what we're talking about today. Basically, it's 14 days where you can stay for free, and in the particular area where we were at, you need to go 25 miles away, and you can continue to then stay 14 days in that area.
So hypothetically, you could bounce back and forth if you follow that 14-day rule, 25 miles apart, and then just go back.
Yeah,
back.
and like between Lake Havasu, Quartzsite, and down to like the Yuma area, there is dozens of areas that you can go to, so plenty of areas.
A good way to kill your winter.
Some people like to call this out in Quartzsite the Wild Wild West. There are some rules that go with it. There are actually a lot of camp hosts right in the beginning of the areas that you go through. But for the most part, you can pull off to any side of the road and camp in the designated areas. Some people even choose to just camp right in the middle of the road. And that's just what it is. There are no designated sites, so you kind of got to get along and play well with everybody. Some of the common areas that are around Arizona there are Dome Rock Mountain, Ferguson Lake, High Jolly, Plamosa Road, which is where we were staying at, Roadrunner, Skadden Wash, and plenty more.
And between all of those places, specifically Plamosa Road, which is where we were, we saw a ton of open space on Plamosa. So if you are new to boondocking or considering boondocking, or maybe just want to practice more boondocking, pushing your limits, Plamosa Road is a great place to go because there's just so much space. There's that you lose the intimidation of getting in and like trying to find a spot. What if you don't find a spot?
And it's easy to get to, and it's big rig friendly. So it's right off the paved road. There are lots of flat areas, so any type of RV can get in there and stay in there, and it's just one of the easiest ways to boondock.
Having a paved road to go in is like really nice for a BLM road. There's a lot of rough roads out there, so this is a great training wheels way to get in, get your feet wet, figure out what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and make some improvements.
And although it's really busy at times, there are still areas that you can kind of go to and get a little bit farther away from people and have more of a private site. But if you're picturing them in the middle of the woods, nowhere in the middle of the desert, nowhere, this is not that area. But there are other areas around there that are much less populated. The second type of BLM area that we're going to talk about is the fee area. And these are called long-term visitor areas, or LTVAs, if you've heard that acronym before. And these are quite interesting. We've never been to one, but I could see the allure on why people do. And basically, it's $180 for the season, which in this particular area is September 15th to April 15th. It's kind of the same layout, the same area, the same landscape, but it has a little bit more amenities, so you can obviously stay longer. They have vault toilets, sometimes they have trash, sometimes they'll have like a honey wagon that comes around, or a dump station on site that you can pay and use, and it just makes it easier for people that want to stay longer and enjoy the area.
Yeah, so if you know you want to winter somewhere warm, you want to stay there long term, you don't necessarily want to have the stress of relocating every 14 days, maybe the bouncing back and forth sounds horrendous to you, then this might be something that you're interested in looking into.
So why would somebody want to stay 7 months in the same area in the Arizona desert? Well, one reason I could think of would be the weather. It is very, very mild to warm, very, very dry, and just an enjoyable place to come to and escape the cold weather. So the average temps in December are in the mid 60s for the highs and in the high 30s for the lows. January has pretty much the same temperature, and then it starts to warm up a little bit in February with lows of 70s as highs and then into the 40s for the lows. March, it creeps up into the high 70s and into the 50s. And then into April, you start getting into the really warm weather into the high 80s.
Another reason that you might be attracted to staying in Quartzsite is because it is a great space to rally in a group of people. Maybe you have a club, maybe you just want a group of your similar road RV friends to get together in one spot and hang out. When we were there, there were lots of rallies going on, and
Yes.
it's especially helpful because of the ease of getting in, because of the excess space. You don't have to send somebody in like a week early to, pitch a flag and claim their turf. Like, you can all get in on the same day and have no problem finding a spot.
Yeah, although a lot of people I see, came in and kind of tried to set up a big area for the really large rallies where, there was up to like 20 Class A's, and some of them, they're really, really big. Mm-hmm. Others, there would be maybe 3 or 4 vans, and it seemed like rigs attracted like rigs. And I wonder if people meet each other online or in forums or chat rooms or Instagram or whatever, and then they plan a little meetup and they get together. So we saw ambulances out there, we saw vans, we saw marathons and Prevost coaches, we saw Class A's, and all types of things out there.
It was pretty cool. And of course, your group doesn't have to be a large size group. When we were out there, we were with a group of friends. We weren't on the extremely large side. We were a smaller side. At a couple times, there was just like 3 rigs out there together. But it is a really great way to meet up with friends, get together, and fulfill that socializing that an RVer can sometimes miss.
Yes, and there is lots of different types of clubs out there, but the one that we're in is called the Escapers. They're also part of the Escapees. So if you haven't heard about them, we'll leave a link down below and you can learn a little bit more about them. But the Escapers are working class full-time RVers that are all enjoying this lifestyle and trying to also create a bit of a community on the road. So what would you even do out in the middle of the desert when you meet up with all these people?
Well, I can tell you what we did. We did a lot of hiking. We did a lot of walking. We had some campfires. We did some cook-offs. It was really fun. For each RV, we would kind of take nights on rotating who cooked the main dinner. Not all the time, but it's fun to show up and, just have dinner together, especially if you are still working during the day. Then there's no pressure to entertain each other during the day. You just kind of connect at the campfire whenever you're free or have time to get together.
Yeah, that's definitely nice to do. And some of the bigger type of events that we did, most memorable was we went to the Desert Bar. And if you haven't heard of the Desert Bar, it's pretty cool. It's in between Lake Havasu and Quartzsite, and it is basically a solar and battery run bar in the middle of nowhere that has grown and grown over the years, and it just is something that you have to see once you're out there. And getting there is really the fun part of it. So there's a main entrance off the highway that's like a 5-mile washboard dirt road. And then we actually got to take the back trailway with some of our friends. And this is where you're going to take your side-by-sides or your dirt bikes, 4x4s, like Jeeps. We were with friends, Jesse and Melissa from Adventure Endeavor, and they have kind of an off-road pickup truck that was just an extreme blast. We were also with some friends, Rebecca and Jared, that were in their Jeep, and It was just crazy to do that type of stuff because we don't get to do that very often.
Yeah, us being in this van, we're always just kind of like boating around. We don't get to do anything exciting like that. So to get
We would have had to take the washboard road in at about 2.5 miles an hour.
Yeah, we would have left on Thursday and gotten in on Monday.
They're closed.
So yeah, so it was fun to have some friends take us out, show us what it's like in their setup. You know, every rig is different. There's pros and cons. And one of the pros that those bigger rigs have is they have their towed vehicle or their tow vehicle, both one of each in this case. And it was just super fun.
Hiking was the other big thing that we drove down to the Kofa Wildlife Refuge area, which also has BLM out there. It's a little bit farther, a little bit longer to get to, but it's much, much prettier than the Quartzsite area just because it has the mountains that are closer. It has more saguaros. Just the terrain all around is just a little bit prettier. And so we went to Palm Canyon hike, and that was just unbelievable. It's these palm trees that are in the middle of this kind of mountain canyonous area. Just something that you would never ever think of seeing, and it was quite a strenuous and pretty hike.
Yes, and speaking of terrain, we must warn you that it is extremely dusty and sandy here. So if you're somebody that likes to run outside or do a lot of HIIT activities, things like that, you might feel okay at first, but the days will catch up to you after breathing all that dust in, and your lungs start to feel cruddy. Aaron and I call it the Quartzsite crud. So if you're allergic to dust or have severe allergies, just be aware because it might not feel good for you and you might need to head out if you don't respond well to it.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest downside of that area is that you are in the middle of the desert, and really boondocking in general. Like, you're pretty much in the elements of nature, so you have to deal with dirt, dust, wind, rain, sun, bugs. Thankfully out there, there's not a whole ton of bugs and things like that out there. We did see a mouse that walked up to our campfire in the middle of the night as we were sitting around it. So there are mice out there. What else did we see out there? Lots of coyotes we heard out off in the distance every morning.
Yeah.
And so that's always kind of fun to hear that stuff. But otherwise, it's the desert. You don't see a lot of the wildlife out there. It's very, very hidden. But that's just kind of what it is. If you're into stargazing, definitely a fun place to come out and just sit in the middle of the desert and look up out there. That was some of the best that I think we've seen out there. It gets dark very early, and it gets very dark. And if the skies are clear, it's just really, really quite beautiful to see that out there, and it makes you feel quite small.
Yeah, it was really cool. We saw the Milky Way. We saw a shooting star. We saw the
satellite dish, yeah.
So it was really great. We did see some paper lanterns floating too, which you might think are kind of cool to see, but really they're not because they litter the planet. So we did pick up some littered lanterns laying around, but you might see some of those out there if you wonder what it is. It's paper lanterns soaring through the sky.
And before we forget to talk about the amazing sunsets that are out there, it's almost every night. It's just a beautiful, beautiful scene. So that's kind of great after your days of work or whatever you want to do, to just meet around the campfire, maybe have dinner together, and just sit and watch the sunset every night. And it's hard to replace that.
Yeah, and the sunrises too. We love to wake up and go walking early when it's dark and see the sunrise right before our eyes mid-walk. So we got to enjoy sunrises and sunsets every day, and it was really good. The weather is cold, so, being in the desert in the winter, it is revolved around the sun. So in the morning, we were bundling up in hoodies, jackets, hats, mittens, and it felt like winter.
Yeah.
But as soon as the sun comes up midday, it's totally different.
Like I said on the temperatures, it's lows of 30s when you're out there in December and January. So that's pretty cold, and it's the desert, so it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it gets colder quicker and hotter faster. It's really weird. The desert doesn't. I think there's just not a lot to hold the heat in or hold the cold in. It just seems like the extremes come really quickly. Mm-hmm. As soon as that sun sets, you feel that cold air come. It's the same with the sun rising. You can feel that sunshine hit you and feel the heat. And probably the main reason that everybody goes to Quartzsite is for the big tent show. And last year in 2020, would that be 2019? No, it'd be 2020.
2020.
January of 2020, we were working with a vendor there, and we worked the full 10 days of the show. So we really didn't get to explore Quartzsite that much and the surrounding areas because we were kind of at the whole show, and that consumed everything. But it was definitely a fun experience to see that. And then this year, we kind of rode our e-bikes there, and it was quite a different scene. Obviously, it's a different year, but it still was going on, and still thousands and thousands of people went there. And then the surrounding swap meets that are all around it. So they have the rock shows, the gem shows, and the local swap meets that run for months, I think, every year.
Yeah, it is really cool to see the swap meets and go and just look at stuff. We did indulge in the world's best corn dogs there. That's fun. So there's just certain things that if you go there one year, you look forward to repeating it when you go back the following year. So you do definitely have some annual events at Quartzsite that you look forward to repeating.
And if you're big on eating out, Quartzsite does not have a ton to offer in the restaurant area. We can say Taco Mio is their Mexican restaurant, which is pretty good, pretty cheap, pretty fast. We didn't go to the Chinese restaurant, but they do have Chinese food there. And of course, we can't forget to mention the adult daycare, which is right next to the big tent show and by the swap meets, where it's kind of an outdoor bar that a lot of people like to visit.
And they're known for their dollar burgers that start at 4 p.m.
That's true. So that's just a little bit more on Quartzsite, what it is, what you can expect. And we do recommend that you check it out at least once, especially if you're on the west side of the United States. What a cool area to meet up with friends out in the middle of the desert for a week or 2 weeks, have some fun, and then keep on traveling. So that's going to do it for this video, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
That's pretty good.
It's good. I fucking love that.
That's pretty good.
You are so good, babe. Oh, baby, baby, it's a wild world. Da-na-na.
I'd be careful singing at the camera if you don't want that to show up. I'd be really careful.
You have to live with any sort of repercussion, so I'd be careful of what you threaten.
We've been sliding since I don't remember when.